So basically, if you ask me what it's all about, I would say it is time cheap. And it's not to be taken too seriously. In 1991, Freddie Mercury kept a secret that shocked his fans. The Queen singer was dying, but hid his condition for years. His body was weak, but his voice stayed powerful. He filmed his last video in black and white to hide how sick he was. In his final days, he stopped all medicine except painkillers. After telling the world what he had, he died just 24 hours later. Today, we're revealing what really happened to Freddie Mercury in his final days. Freddie Mercury was born as Farrokh Bulsara on September 5, 1946, in Stone Town, Zanzibar. His parents, Bomi and Jair, were Parsis with roots in India. They came from the small city of Bulsar, now called Valsad. In Gujarat, his family followed the Zoroastrian religion, which came from ancient Persia. From the beginning, Freddie stood out. He was born with 4 extra teeth, and later, he believed that this unusual mouth structure gave him his powerful singing voice. His range could reach from deep bass to soaring soprano. He was also born a British subject, since Zanzibar was still under British rule. That small detail would later open doors that changed his life forever. When Freddie was 6, his sister Kashmira was born. Years later, in 1906, he officially became a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies. Just as his fame was starting to rise, his early years in Zanzibar were peaceful and privileged. His father worked for the British Colonial Office as a cashier in the High Court. That job gave the family special status. They lived comfortably, while most others didn't. Freddie first went to school at a missionary-run place where Anglican nuns taught him. It gave him a taste of British education. But all that changed in 1964. A violent revolution broke out in Zanzibar. Thousands of Arabs and South Asians were killed. The Bulsaras had to flee. They left everything behind and escaped to England. Freddie was 17. It was a sudden shift from island paradise to cold, gray Pelton. Life was never the same again. But the real beginning had already started years earlier. When Freddie was 8, his parents sent him to St. Peter's School in Panchgani, India. It was a British-style boarding school tucked in the hills outside Mumbai. The place was strict. Students wore uniforms, followed rules, and spoke proper English. But something unexpected happened there. The headmaster saw talent in Freddie and asked his parents to pay extra for piano lessons. That small decision sparked something big. Freddie learned quickly. He wasn't just good. He was gifted. He played sports, acted in plays, painted and played piano with ease. He was quiet, but never invisible. Other kids called him Bucky because of his teeth. He took it in stride. At 12, he won a school award for being the best all-rounder. That was Freddie in a nutshell. Good at everything, especially when it came to performing. In 1963, he went back to Zanzibar, full of ideas and a new sense of identity. But even before that, he had already felt the thrill of the stage. While at St. Peter's, Freddie joined a band called the Hectics. He was only 12. The group included 4 other boys: Bruce, Derek, Faring, and Victory. They played songs by Elvis, Cliff Richard, and Little Richard. Freddie played piano and sometimes sang. People were shocked at how easily he could copy music just by hearing it. His fingers flew over the keys. At school events, the band became a mini sensation. Kids screamed, they clapped and danced. That early attention gave Freddie his first taste of what it meant to be a star. But his style wasn't just shaped by rock music. He also listened to Bollywood greats like Lata Mangeshkar and Kishore Kumar. Their emotional singing would later influence the way Queen created dramatic theatrical songs. When he left St. Peter's, he had already passed grade 4 piano exams. In 1964, Freddie was just 17 when his world in Zanzibar fell apart. The island was on fire with violence. Thousands were killed in a wave of hatred that targeted people like him, Parsi Indians. His family had no choice. They fled. They packed what they could and escaped to England, leaving behind sunshine, friends, and everything familiar. They didn't land in glamour or comfort. Their new life began in a dull suburb called Feltham, miles away from central London. The houses were gray, the skies even grayer. Everything felt cold. For a boy who once swam in turquoise waters, this place felt like exile. But in that silence, something started to grow. Freddie didn't just survive the shock, he began to change. After finishing school, he joined Isleworth Polytechnic and then moved on to Ealing Art College. That's where the magic began. Ealing wasn't just a school. It was a playground for rebels, artists, and misfits. Freddie found his tribe there, people who didn't want to follow the rules. He studied graphic design, but spent just as much time dreaming of music. He met Tim Stoffel. They clicked. They were both into music, both thinking bigger than just classes. Freddie even helped make an underground magazine that mocked the design world he was supposed to join. He wanted more. Outside of school, Freddie was falling hard for Hendrix. The moment he heard him, something lit up. He didn't just listen. He sketched him, followed his performances, studied his moves. He wanted that kind of power on stage. He didn't want to sing. He wanted to command. That obsession pushed him into a band called Ibex. They weren't famous. They played in pubs and shared flats. But Freddie was happy. He could try things, fail, and try again. He was becoming something different. His ears were wide open. He soaked in everything from Aretha Franklin's voice to Lennon's lyrics. He loved the Beatles' harmonies, but he also loved the wildness of Elvis. His mind was a blender, mixing soul, rock, and glam. At the same time, he was selling clothes at Kensington Market with Roger Taylor. They worked together, hung out, and laughed a lot. That job wasn't just a paycheck. It gave him style. He learned what looked good, what turned heads, and slowly, he began to stand out. Not as Farouk, but as Freddie. Freddie Bulsara was just 22 when everything started to change. He had just finished art school in London and wasn't sure where his future was going. Then, in August 1969, he met a band from Liverpool called Ibex. They weren't famous. They had only played a few gigs. But Freddie saw something in them. And they saw something in him. In just 10 days, he learned all their songs, added some of his own, and traveled with them to Bolton. That's where he performed on stage for the first time at the Octagon Theatre. The crowd didn't know it yet, but they were watching a star being born. Freddie didn't just sing. He moved. He dazzled. He owned the stage. The band had never seen anything like it. One member said, "We used to just play and not worry about putting on a show." But Freddie changed all that. Even though he only had one pair of trousers and one shirt, he walked like a rock star. By October, Freddie had convinced the band to change their name. Ibex became Wreckage. The sound changed too. Freddie started writing more songs. He worked with guitarist Mike Burson, and together they made songs like Vagabond Outcast and FEWA. They even recorded one of them, Green, in Freddie's flat in London. That recording would survive, and years later it would be released. But Wreckage didn't last. The band broke up and Freddie moved on to a short-lived project called Sour Milk Sea. That didn't last either. Still, Freddie wasn't shaken. He was already thinking bigger. He once told his old bandmates, "We're not going to make it playing all this three-chord blues crap. We have to write our own songs." And then came the twist no one expected. On March 29, 1970, Tim Stoffel quit his band. That band was Smile, and it had two other members, Brian May and Roger Taylor. Tim had been friends with Freddie since art college. They met back in 1965, so when Tim left, Freddie didn't waste time. He stepped in. It felt like destiny. Smile already had talent, but Freddie brought something different, something magnetic. He had the voice, the vision, and the confidence. Even before he joined, he used to go to their gigs and tell them how they could do better. Brian and Roger weren't sure at first. Roger later said, "He was just my crazy mate, not a singer, just someone who was always up for fun." But that changed quickly. Freddie had been waiting for this, and once he got in, there was no going back. He pushed the band to be more dramatic. He told them to go bold with stage presence, costumes, everything. He wanted them to be larger than life. Then he suggested a new name, Queen. It sounded grand. It sounded royal. Brian and Roger hesitated. They thought it might be too much, but Freddie stood firm. He said it was perfect, universal, strong, and yes, even a little provocative. Around the same time, he also changed his name to Mercury. This wasn't just a new band, it was a full-blown reinvention. But they weren't complete yet. They needed a bassist, and that part was tricky. They tried a few, but no one really clicked. Then one day, in 1971, they met John Deacon. He was quiet, only 19 years old, a student, not flashy like the rest. But he showed up at rehearsal with his bass and a custom-built amp. That amp would later help shape Queen's signature sound. He played smoothly, stayed humble, and didn't fight for attention. The band liked that. They brought him in. Queen was finally whole. Freddie's influence went even further. He didn't just change the name. He designed the logo, too. He used what he learned in art school to draw a crest. It had lions, a crab, fairies, all based on the band's zodiac signs. The lions were for Roger and John, the crab for Brian, the fairies for Freddie himself. He wrapped it all around a giant letter Q with a crown in the middle and a phoenix above. It looked like something royal, like it belonged to a band meant to rule the stage. But their first album didn't come easy. They recorded it at Trident Studios, where big names like the Beatles had worked. Still, Queen wasn't big yet, so they had to use the studio only during off hours, late at night when everyone else was done. They'd hang around waiting, then go in and record until morning. It was exhausting. They kept at it for months. When the album was done, there was more bad news. It got delayed. They waited and waited. It finally came out in July 1973. The reviews were mixed. Some people got it, most didn't. But the band didn't care. They knew they were building something that would last. In 1974, Queen was still trying to figure out who they really were. Their earlier albums had talent, sure, but they felt scattered. Too long, too complex, too much trying to be something else. But everything changed with sheer heart attack. This was the moment Freddie Mercury stopped experimenting and started owning his sound. He tightened the songs, brought in drama, glamour, and made them feel big, even when they were just 3 minutes long. Then came Killer Queen. And suddenly they weren't just another band. They were the band. The song blew up in the UK, crossed over to America, and Queen finally broke through. But behind the scenes, things weren't glamorous at all. Queen was broke. Their label, Trident Studios, kept most of the money while the band got paid like part-timers. They had hits, but they couldn't afford proper housing. Freddie lived in a damp little flat, and John Deacon couldn't even get a loan for a home. That's when they snapped. After months of legal battles, they broke free, but at a heavy price. They had to pay out hundreds of thousands and give up royalties from future albums. The timing was risky, because just as they got free, they decided to make their most expensive album ever. A Night at the Opera wasn't just another record. It was a last-ditch swing. They used 7 studios, burned through more money than any British band ever had before, and gambled everything on it working. It had to work, or they were done. The pressure was crushing, but it forced them to aim higher. Freddie, always the boldest, came in with a 6-minute monster called Bohemian Rhapsody. It made no sense to anyone at first. No chorus, operatic madness. Who'd play that on the radio? But Freddie wasn't asking. He was telling. He filmed a cheap but striking video in a single day, pushed it out, and rewrote the rules of pop music. The song stayed at #1 for 9 weeks. It was unlike anything before, and it worked. Freddie didn't just change music with that song. He changed himself. On stage, he became something new. He wasn't just singing. He was commanding, strutting, performing like a man possessed. His voice could hit crazy highs and heartbreaking lows. He could stand in front of 20,000 people and make each one feel like he was singing just to them. That broken mic stand he accidentally snapped? He turned it into a prop, a weapon, a signature move. By the time he sang Bohemian Rhapsody live for the first time, people weren't just watching a concert. They were watching a showman in full bloom. Then came that night in 1977, Bingley Hall. After the band played, the crowd suddenly started singing, "You'll Never Walk Alone." No one planned it. It just happened. Freddie watched, amazed. He turned to Brian May and said, "We need songs for this." That moment inspired We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. Two of the most iconic stadium anthems in history were born from one raw, emotional moment with the fans. Mercury wasn't just performing anymore. He was creating music that crowds could scream back at him, and they did. Every night. By the time Another One Bites the Dust dropped in 1980, Freddie had taken Queen far from their glam rock roots. The song was funky, edgy, and totally unexpected. People thought Queen couldn't pull that off, but they did. It became their biggest United States hit. Mercury never stayed in one lane. He kept moving, kept reinventing. That's why his music kept reaching new people. No one could pin him down. And with success came indulgence. Mercury didn't believe in saving money. He believed in spending it. If he liked something, he bought it. If his sister needed a kitchen, she got a new kitchen. If a jewelry store was closed, he'd have it opened just for him. His birthday party in Ibiza was pure madness. 700 guests, a giant cake modeled after Gaudi's cathedral, and hundreds of broken glasses by the end. Freddie didn't just live large. He lived louder than anyone else. But not everything he did turned to gold. In 1984, Queen decided to play in Sun City, South Africa, right in the middle of the apartheid regime. It was legal, but it was controversial. There was a cultural boycott. Most artists refused to go. Queen went anyway. They said it wasn't political, but others saw it differently. The backlash was brutal. They got fined, blacklisted, and called out in protest songs. Years later, even the band admitted they might have made a mistake. They didn't do it for money, they claimed, but the damage was done. Freddie Mercury was always chasing something new. In 1980, that chase led Queen into Unfamiliar Territory, a film soundtrack for Flash Gordon. It wasn't a full-blown rock album, and only a couple of songs had lyrics. Brian May did most of the heavy lifting, diving into synthesizers, which were still new for the band. Fans didn't quite know what to make of it. Some thought the music was more exciting than the movie. Others didn't get it at all. But that strange project hinted at something bigger. Queen was about to shift directions, and not everyone would follow. Just 2 years later, they went even further off course with Hot Space. This was disco, funk, synths everywhere. It wasn't the Queen people remembered. John Deacon and Freddie were into it. Brian and Roger weren't. The tension was obvious, and so was the damage. Long nights in Munich turned into long fights. Everyone drank too much. Brian said they were emotionally wrecked. Roger blamed Freddie's manager, Paul Printer, for pushing the band into gay club music. It wasn't just a bad album to some. It felt like betrayal. But even as fans turned away, others were listening. Michael Jackson took notes. Musicians paid attention. Maybe Hot Space flopped, but its fingerprints were everywhere in the years that followed. In the middle of this chaos, something magical happened. Queen met David Bowie in a studio in Switzerland. What started as a jam turned into under pressure. That bass line? Pure Deacon. The energy? Total clash. Freddie and Bowie fought constantly, but that spark made the song unforgettable. It went straight to #1. And it proved something. They could still surprise people, even if they were falling apart behind the scenes. By 1983, they needed a break. They weren't just tired, they were burned out. They'd spent years recording, touring, and arguing. Now they stopped. For the first time since they began, Queen hit pause. The break let them breathe, but it didn't fix everything. The band was split in two. Freddie and Deacon wanted more dance. Brian and Roger clung to rock. Freddie's loyalty to Printer only made things worse. Still, that silence gave them time to remember who they were and what they could still become. Then came the works in 1984. It was the reset they needed. Set. Freddie brought his flair. Deacon added rhythm. But Brian and Roger finally got their guitars back. The sound was balanced, rock and pop together. Radio Gaga exploded. I Want to Break Free became an anthem. The band was back. They stayed on the charts for nearly 2 years, and this time the whole world noticed, except America. The video for I Want to Break Free showed the band in drag. The UK got the joke. MTV didn't. The video was banned. Fans turned away. In Rio, when Freddie wore the costume on stage, the crowd threw things at him. It was brutal, and Queen never fully recovered in the US after that. Freddie didn't stop. He had something else to prove. In 1985, he released Mr. Bad Guy, his solo album. It was pure Freddie. No compromises, all him. He dedicated it to his cats and filled it with dance beats, sad ballads, and cheeky fun. Some fans loved it, others didn't. The US barely noticed. But for Freddie, it wasn't about sales. It was about freedom. He had spent years trapped in the Queen machine. Now he was doing it his way. And then he did something no one saw coming. He teamed up with an opera star, Montserrat Caballé. She was one of his heroes, and somehow he got her to say yes. They met in a hotel in Barcelona. He played her a demo, singing her parts in falsetto. She was stunned. They recorded Barcelona, and it was magic. It mixed opera and rock in a way no one had ever done. When Barcelona was chosen for the 1992 Olympics, the song became an anthem. They even made a full album together. It was bold, strange, and beautiful, just like Freddie. Freddie Mercury knew he was running out of time, but he didn't let that stop him. In early 1988, just months after being diagnosed with HIV, he walked into the studio with Queen and started recording again. He didn't tell the public. He didn't want sympathy. He just wanted to sing. And somehow, through all the pain and the fear, he gave everything he had. The result was The Miracle, an album that didn't sound like a farewell, but a triumph. It hit #1 across Europe. People didn't know it yet, but it was a miracle in more ways than one. Then came Innuendo. By the time they worked on that album, Freddie's body was weaker, but his voice hadn't lost an ounce of power. Brian May later said Freddie asked them to keep writing songs. He didn't care how sick he was. He wanted to keep going. He told them, "You can finish it after I'm gone." But while he was still here, he gave them everything. The title track hit #1. It was bold, haunting, and brilliant, just like him. In public, though, the truth was getting harder to hide. On February 18, 1990, Freddie stepped onto the Brit Awards stage to accept a Lifetime Achievement Award with Queen. He didn't say much. Just 5 words, "Thank you, good night." His silence said more than any speech. He looked thin. He looked tired. And suddenly, the rumors that had been swirling for years felt very real. But even then, he smiled. He waved. He didn't want anyone to see his pain. Not even his fans. His bandmates later said they never talked about his illness. It was an unspoken rule. If Freddie didn't want to say it, they didn't ask. Back in the studio, he kept recording. Some days he could barely stand. Some days he could only sing for an hour or two. But he showed up anyway. Engineers who worked with him said it wasn't a sad place. It was full of laughter. Freddie kept the mood light, even when his body was giving up. He didn't let the darkness win. When they asked if he could handle the vocals for The Show Must Go On, he didn't hesitate. He said, "I'll fucking do it, darling." Then he downed a glass of vodka and nailed it in one take. That one performance became one of the most powerful moments of his career. In May 1991, he filmed his last music video, These Are the Days of Our Lives. You wouldn't know it was a goodbye unless you looked closely. It was shot in black and white to hide how sick he really was. He wore a vest covered in drawings of his cats. He smiled, joked, and did take after take until he was satisfied. And then, at the end of the video, he looked straight into the camera and whispered, "I still love you." That was his final message. He knew what was coming, and he made sure the world knew he loved them, right to the end. A few months later, in November, he made a final decision. No more medication, just painkillers. He was ready. He wanted peace. His friends stayed by his side around the clock. He couldn't paint anymore. He couldn't see well, but he still laughed. He still shared memories. On November 22nd, he told Queen's manager to release a public statement confirming he had AIDS. At 8 p.m., the news broke. And at that very moment, Freddie Mercury, lying in his bed, smiled. His assistant said it was the most relaxed he'd seen him in years. The secret was gone. The fight was almost over. Less than 24 hours later, on November 24th, 1991, at exactly 6:48 p.m., Freddie Mercury died. He was 45. The world had lost a voice, a legend, and the first rock star to openly die of the disease at a time when even the word AIDS made people uncomfortable. His death forced the conversation into the spotlight. It couldn't be ignored anymore. But even in death, Freddie left behind a mystery that no concert could answer. Everyone knew he was cremated at Kensal Green Cemetery in West London. What no one knew was what happened to his ashes. For over a year, they remained unclaimed. It was Mary Austin, his closest friend and former lover, who eventually took them. And she never said where they went. In 2013, fans found a small plaque hidden in the cemetery. It had his real name, birth and death dates, and a message in French signed only with an M. But it vanished soon after, likely removed to keep the secret safe.